and getting better for the weekend. So you've got me, Elliott York, of course, alongside Louis Suddaby as well, to preview the Italian Grand Prix, and a lot to get stuck into as well after a very dramatic Catalan Grand Prix. First and foremost, Louis, good to see you. How are you, and how good is it to be back here in Mugello, one of the special places to visit on the calendar?
Yeah, very well indeed. Normally we don't have any supporters of Premier League football teams on this show. Now we've got two all of a sudden. Getting that mention out of the way while I can. Yeah, there's no better place really to be in the world for Grand Prix motorcycle racing than this. This is where we see MotoGP races at their least restrained, I guess. This is where the top speed in MotoGP history has been set over the years. Brad Binder hitting over 360 kilometers an hour on the factory KTM. 3, 4, 5 abreast into San Donato throughout the Grand Prix. It's generally one of the circuits that if you've got a bucket list of MotoGP, like at any Grand Prix, you're going to see the very best racing on either 2 or 4 wheels. But Mugello, more than anywhere else, is just a jewel in the crown. Of course, an Italian rider leading the championship. An Italian won the Catalan Grand Prix a couple of weeks ago. So plenty for the fans here to get excited about. Yeah, absolutely. We'll back that up. I went to the top of the straight here last year, and it is an absolute marvellous sight. Do get here if you can. It truly is a spectacular racing circuit, and of course an area of Italy that you should absolutely come to. Lewis, we're obviously stood by Ducati. You guys can see behind us Ducati at full strength. I say full strength. Marc Marquez still getting back up to fitness, but we are welcoming back the reigning world champion this weekend. One of the big stories heading into the weekend, of course. Lewis, how great is it to have Marc back on track? For us, the spectacle, for the Ducati fans, and of course for Marc. If he wants any chance of winning this title, he needs to be back on track, and that's exactly what you're doing this weekend, albeit a very difficult circuit to come back to when you're not fully fit. Yeah, huge, isn't it, for Marc Marquez? When he went off for his 2 surgeries, of course we knew he was going to have one after the French Grand Prix sprint crash, and then of course he revealed there was going to be a second, some catch-up work if you like on his shoulder that was originally going to be scheduled for after the Catalan Grand Prix. That got brought forward due to the broken toe that he sustained in the sprint in Le Mans. For the show it's huge, as you mentioned, last year's winner, and of course a full-strength Ducati team for what is a very special Grand Prix for them, a centenary year for the factory Ducati squad, which they'll be marking on Sunday. And I guess we're going to maybe get the definitive answer either this weekend or in the races up to the summer break, up to the Sachsenring in mid-July. 2026 Ducati, Marc Marquez, we hope and expect now will finally be at absolute full peak physical condition. Genuinely, where do they stack up against the factory Aprilias, who have largely dominated this 2026 season? Marc Marquez, of course, will not have enjoyed his absence, certainly won't have enjoyed what happened in Barcelona, obviously with the circumstances around his younger brother, which we're going to come to later on. But 2 of the last 3 Grand Prix have been won by the 2026 spec Ducati. So for all of the difficulties that they've had so far this season, that bike is clearly not a dud. It's clearly not slow. It clearly can win. And I think we're all looking forward to seeing Marc Marquez unchained and hopefully something like 100% fitness. Whether we see that this weekend, first Grand Prix back, might be too much to ask. But I think we're all fascinated to see what the genuine level of Marc Marquez and the Ducati GP26 are. And over the next few weeks, I hope we'll get that answer. Yeah, for sure. I spoke to him earlier. We're going to throw to the interview in a second. He is past fit to ride tomorrow morning. He is going to have a review after FP1 tomorrow morning. Now, for all intents and purposes, we do believe that he's going to be all okay. But listen to Marc Marquez in a second. He's coming in with the mindset that he is not challenging for the title. He does say in this interview coming up that if he is going to challenge for the title in this mindset, he might re-injure himself. So these next couple of Grand Prix, Marc says, he's just going to take his time, get used to the feeling, especially in the shoulder. So it was myself speaking to Marc earlier. So here's what he said a little bit earlier on, around about an hour or 2 ago.
Feeling is acceptable. For that reason I'm here, because we analyzed the situation with my doctors and of course myself and physios, and we understand that now the correct step is quite close from the surgery, but it's just we need time. We need time, and this time we can spend on the bike. It's true that you need to approach the weekend in the correct mentality. Just try to improve session by session, but I will say we can follow another weekend and try to do that steps in a solid way, because yeah, when you have a nerve that was damaged, now not anymore, but takes time to come back in a normal situation. And let's see, I will try to work, insist, persist, for try to understand if I can reach an acceptable level to fight with the top guys in the next races.
What injury is going to cause more issues this weekend? Is it the foot or just getting the shoulder back up to speed, or maybe a mix of both, obviously?
No, the foot is peanuts. The foot, nothing. It's just I was ready to race in Catalonia. It's more the shoulder. Was my biggest limitation this last month. I was work super hard, and on 2025 I was able to ride well, but that Indonesia crash hit again the right shoulder. That was my weak point, and yeah, now we take out some material from inside, and let's see. I don't know. The doctors don't know. Nobody knows what will going on in the future, but I know that I will try, and if I need to try, I need to be on the bike. For that reason, the easiest way will be stay at home and be here in 3-4 races. But I'm not afraid about try to approach the situations in a good way, but always trying to improve as quick as possible.
In training, have you already felt the difference in terms of what you were feeling before compared to what you're feeling now?
No. No. The problem before was a bit that on training I was feeling not bad, but on racing I was feeling super bad. And then we analyzed that on a racing mode with the arms in front, that screw was touching the nerve. So when you have a nerve problem, believe me, that is worse than a bone or than a muscle, because the nerve disconnect everything. So yeah, now I don't have that disconnection problems. We think that about clinical side everything is okay, but the nerve takes time to come back in a normal way, and especially the muscles that are connected with that nerve also takes even more time.
85 points, you are behind Bez. Mark, I know from what you've just said, you're not really thinking about the championship here and probably in Hungary as well, but are you coming back with the mentality that you can still win this championship?
If I come back with the mentality of, like you say, I can win this championship, I will be injured again. So now is not the correct one. I'm with the mentality to rebuild my future, because like I ride the fair races, I was not able to continue. So let's see if in the next races I can rebuild my right arm, and from that point I know that the speed will arrive. But first of all, I need to feel well about physical condition.
Thank you, Mark. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Yeah, always an open and interesting chat with Mark, super honest as always. Interesting to hear the mindset he's coming into this Grand Prix and the next Grand Prix in Hungary as well. How much we believe him, I don't know, because he's good at the old mind games, but it's clear that Mark was not at all 100% fit. He's undergone surgery, and of course on the foot as well. He described it as peanuts, not a big problem for Mark, a big problem for everyone else, but not for Marc Marquez. How do you view that interview and view Mark coming into this weekend? And obviously we're back-to-back with Hungary next weekend. It sounds like he isn't going to come into this weekend at Mugello thinking, I need to win or I need to finish on the podium. It's about building that consistency and the strength in the shoulder as well.
I think Mark obviously recognises that in terms of the World Championship, if he is going to get himself back into the World Championship, it's going to be a long, long road to get himself back from there. 85 points adrift, which we've seen MotoGP World titles won from further back than that. Pecco Bagnaia was 91 back in 2022. But yeah, I think if you already go in with the mindset of, I must win, I need to take risks to try and get those wins, then not only is that where you make further mistakes, but I think more in Mark's head, that is where you have a further crash and potentially risk hurting yourself. Again, Mark is much more aware of his own, I guess, humanity now in 2026, given what happened to him pre last World Championship and post World Championship with the crash in Indonesia. 2 injuries which could quite easily have ended his career. We did wonder after the start to this season whether we were ever going to see Marc Marquez back at his very maximum level once again. I think we're all fairly hopeful now and confident that we will, given that his poor performances by his very high standards in the first half of this year have now been explained. And I guess he's just got to work his way back into what we would say is his peak physical condition, get himself back up to speed on this bike, because I guess he would say he's not really ridden this 2026 Ducati at 100% yet to really understand what his level is on that bike. And I guess, yeah, ultimately, given what he's been through over the last year or so, Marc Marquez is not going to be in any situation where he's going to rush his way back to 100% fitness. He knows that if he can find the level he had last year, that he can just win 2, 3, 4 Grand Prix before we can even blink. And before you know it, he is back in the World Championship mix once again. So I think Marc's taking a very calm, careful, long-term approach. He's been down this road before.
Absolutely, and as you mentioned, he's been down this road before. He's got a lot of experience dealing with these types of injuries and has switched his mindset from what happened over in 2020 to now. A lot has happened since then, and a lot happened at the Catalan Grand Prix as well. Obviously, from one Marquez to another, Alex Marquez. Thankfully, the main thing is Alex and, of course, Johanna will come to speak to as well, are on the mend after 2 awful crashes, it has to be said, over in Barcelona. Some positive news, though. Pretty immediately after the crashes, that Alex is on the mend, underwent surgery on his C7 vertebrae and his collarbone as well. Just happy that both riders are relatively okay. We're not going to see either of them at the next couple of Grand Prix, which is completely understandable, of course. But how good was it to hear that, first and foremost, Alex, will come on to Johan, as I mentioned, were relatively okay?
Yeah, just a reminder, isn't it, of the incredible risks that go on in MotoGP and the kind of accident that you can't prepare yourself for, you can't prepare any kind of racetrack or any kind of motorcycle for. When a bike breaks down, when Alex Marquez was meters behind, if not less than that, behind Pedro Acosta, you're seeing the incident now on your screens. Absolutely no chance to react to that. And I guess when we all saw that incident live, we all not necessarily feared the worst, but we were just hoping that Alex Marquez didn't connect with that wall on his right-hand side. Fortunately, he bounced along it, and the damage he's done obviously is still significant. A broken collarbone and a fractured vertebrae in his neck is still significant, but in the grand scheme of things, given what could have happened in an instance such as that on a straight, where naturally there isn't the kind of runoff because you don't expect anyone to crash there. It's just not the kind of incident that you necessarily prepare for. So it's great to see Alex Marquez is smiling, on the mend, and at the moment they've ruled him out for the next couple of Grand Prix. We won't see him this weekend, we won't see him in Hungary. What happens beyond then, perhaps we might find out shortly when we hear from Michele Messini. And of course the incident that happened soon after that for Johann Zarco too, in the first corner, an incident with Luca Marini and Pecco Bagnaia, and yeah, a crash that we don't want to see any further times. It was a brutal crash to look at, a very freakish set of circumstances to find his leg trapped in that way between the seat and the rear tyre of Pecco Bagnaia's Ducati. And then of course once that happened, he was in absolutely no position to do anything other than just go along for the ride and hope not too much damage was done. It feels, doesn't it, as if his injury is more significant and is going to keep him out for longer given the ligament damage to his knee. But I guess we'll get some further information on that from their respective team bosses shortly.
Yeah, exactly, who we can speak about, hear from now. I spoke to Lucio Cecchinello earlier, Kiko Giles, our colleague, spoke to Michele Messini earlier from Cassini. So here's what these guys had to say about the update to Alex and of course Johan as well.
Alex feels slightly better day by day. It's now just a matter 2 days and a couple of weeks of rest, of course. But so we are so happy to see him. Let me say, well, a part of the nasty crash, and seems Alex go back home quite immediately. We need to wait these 2 weeks, then he still made again some exams, some visit, and we will evaluate, I think, before Brno, but I cannot say that nothing more, just a couple of days. So the priority, the important thing is that day by day the recovery went well.
I'm pleased to say that I had a personal talk with the doctor that now will make the surgery in few days. Will make the surgery to the knee of Zarco. He said that he has no doubt that Johan will be back 100%. The knee will be perfectly recovered 100% after the surgery. It will need time, but that's the reality. Well, the doctor in reality said that he prefers to wait the surgery to see in reality how the surgery will go, and then he will be more precise on the recovery time. But it's a couple of months, definitely. It needs a couple of months because physiologically there is a certain time that you cannot speed up.
Yeah, about as positive an update as we could have hoped for, really, at this stage on both Alex and Johan. A bittersweet Sunday for Grassini, obviously the sadness and the scary incident to Alex, but also Firmino Aldeguer returning to the podium. Great to see Firmino, who's had his injury troubles as well, of course, with that broken femur in pre-season testing. Great to see Firmino back on the podium and made the day a little bit more easier to deal with for Grassini, of course, as well, who was super pleased to get their sophomore, the Rookie of the Year, of course, from last year, back on the box.
If you're wondering what the pandemonium is either side of it, because Pecco Bagnaia, one of the home heroes here, has just made his way out of the Ducati box, so he'll be just behind you as you look at us in a moment. Yeah, Firmino Aldeguer, no question that podium came way ahead of schedule. Yeah. Whatever the circumstances of it, of course, it wasn't the normal MotoGP race that we got, of course, with the incidents that happened, the riders who were removed from the restart. Without question, Alex Marquez would have been in there somewhere. Pedro Acosta was defending for his life for so much of the last stages of that Grand Prix. And for Firmino Aldeguer, however the circumstances, to get a podium in just the 6th Grand Prix of the season, having broken his femur in January, is an incredible result. I spoke to his crew chief, Frankie Carcetti, on, I think it was the Friday afternoon, and he said that this is simply a process that we're on with Firmino Aldeguer, and it's not the kind of process that you can just fast forward when you're recovering from an injury like that. Lost all of pre-season testing, didn't ride the 2025 spec Ducati that he's on. Of course, a bike that didn't exactly please everyone last season, it's fair to say, over the course of the year. Didn't ride it until Brazil, the second Grand Prix of the season, so he's trying to essentially put pre-season and the first sort of half of this season all into one. So for him to put in the kind of result that he did from, I think he was 18th on the grid before the original start, then of course with the red flag he moved up the order and then took full advantage of that. Whatever the circumstances, incredible result, and I guess due reward for all of the painstaking recovery and recuperation that he's been through.
Yeah, 100%. He's still limping in the paddock, is Firmino Aldeguer, from that left femur fracture. Same thing with David Munoz in Moto3 as well. And it was a great day overall, really, for Ducati, because Fabio Giannantonio was standing on the top step after he was, of course, involved in that scary incident with Alex Marquez. A nasty cut, I believe, on his finger for Digia resulted in him not testing on the Monday. But forget about testing and forget about a little cut on the finger. What a way for Fabio Giannantonio to return to winning ways for the first time since 2023. That result felt like it had been coming for a couple of races at least, but throughout this season he's been so consistent, Didier, and fantastic to see such a likeable character on the top step again in MotoGP.
Yeah, there's no question, as you said, that result has been coming. He's had the speed to win a Grand Prix before now. This year, of course, he's been on pole position. He's been pretty frequently on the front row of the grid too so far in 2026, but hasn't been able to nail the starts, and I guess in the early laps, because of that, he's found himself in traffic, he's found himself detached from the leading group, and also he's been the victim of the fact that Aprilia generally, when we get to Sunday, tend to make a big step forward. We'll see whether that continues as we go through this weekend at what is Aprilia and Ducati's home Grand Prix. But yeah, it's a just reward for Fabio Giannantonio, who again I think has elevated himself this season as a rider, from a rider who you only have to go back 2.5 years, a rider we thought might not be in MotoGP very much longer. And now we're talking about a situation where there are more than one team boss who are queuing up for his signature next season. You might have seen some of the unseen footage on MotoGP.com, unseen from the weekend in Barcelona, and Valentino Rossi with a little word into the ear of Fabio Giannantonio, essentially saying, are you sure you want to leave us at the end of the season, given that you've won the Grand Prix today? Because all the talk is that he's heading for the factory KTM team for next season. But yeah, huge result for Fabio Giannantonio, and of course with the relative poor weekend of the factory Aprilia riders, he's not out of this World Championship either. He's within 25 points now of the World Championship leader, Marco Bezzecchi, who did manage to somehow get out of the Catalan Grand Prix with a 4th place. So yeah, Fabio Giannantonio, if he can keep this form going and sort his starts out, he might be thinking, why is this just an Aprilia battle for the World Championship? Why are we just talking about Marc Marquez potentially chasing them down? Don't rule me out of this either.
I was going to ask you about that because, as you say, he's less than 30 points away now in the championship. Was on the podium here last year as well, clearly getting on a lot better than he did last year as well on the latest spec Ducati. Do we see Digia as a genuine title contender this year? Or is this just not a flash in the pan? That's doing Digia a massive injustice. But has he got the sort of know-how to challenge the Aprilias and maybe Marc Marquez when he's fully fit as well, to really go for this title?
I guess we'll get that answer firmly when we see Mark at full fitness and full strength on this Ducati GP26 once again, because Digia has been the leading light for Ducati so far this season. There's no question about it. He's been the top Ducati qualifier at most Grand Prix, top Ducati finisher at most Grand Prix as well. But I guess we're still guessing a little bit truly what that bike is capable of, and that's no disrespect to Digia, but we just know that Marc Marquez, one of the greatest riders of all time, is on the same bike as him and hasn't been fully fit so far. I alluded to his starts a moment ago. Without question, if Fabio Di Giannantonio is to fight for a MotoGP World Championship this season, he has got to improve those starts, because it's forgotten now the fact that he won anyway in Barcelona, but he made a complete haulix at the start there as well. Got a load of wheelie off the line, dropped to around 6th place on the first lap, but just had the speed to make up for that anyway. If you're giving up a row on the grid just about every time you leave the start line of either a sprint or a MotoGP race, you aren't going to win many of them. So that's something he needs to improve upon if he is to take that next step.
100%. And from one Ducati to another as well, in Pecco Bagnaia finally back on the podium, albeit not in the circumstances he would have wanted, but a first podium since the Japanese Grand Prix, of course, where he famously won there. Struggled to get going in 2026 as Pecco, and had a bit of a difficult weekend, especially in qualifying, of course, when he didn't even get into Q2, finished 6th in the sprint, and then, of course, got bumped up to the podium in the Grand Prix. So how important was that for Pecco ahead of his home Grand Prix and Ducati's home Grand Prix as well here in Mugello, to just get a bit of fire back in the belly, a bit of confidence ahead of a crucial weekend, a 3-time winner here in MotoGP, of course? Yeah,
boost, I think, for the mentality of Pecco Bagnaia. Of course, you could argue much in the same way as Fabio Di Giannantonio, perhaps to a lesser extent, but there has also been some real signs of progress for Pecco this year. He's had a few sprint podiums, and of course very nearly won the sprint in Austin before Jorge Martin's late medium tyre decision came into play. But he's often found himself starting too far down the grid. But I think Barcelona was a key weekend in terms of making the best out of the situation, which clearly wasn't ideal for him. The Ducati, certainly in his hands, wasn't working all that great, which is why he was in qualifying 1, which is why he was 13th on the grid. So to come through out of all of that and emerge with a podium, and I guess whether it was a mental jinx in his head or whether he wasn't really paying any attention to that, either way, he's put that behind him now, getting himself on the podium. And perfectly timed, given that we come here to a circuit that, until last year and the well-documented 2025 Ducati problems that Pecco Bagnaia had kicked in, this has been one of his stronger venues on the calendar. So I think many, not just necessarily many Italians, but many of a Ducati persuasion will be watching Pecco Bagnaia closely this weekend, saying that if he really has made a step forward this year with the 2026 bike, there are clearly still areas that he's not fully comfortable with it, because he's not winning Grand Prix, and we've seen 2 Ducati riders, as mentioned, on the same bike as him win Grand Prix already this season. So he's clearly not at his maximum. But if there's anywhere where Pecco Bagnaia can just summon that little bit extra, he tried, didn't he, last year, even though he was clearly far from his best. He was really giving it a good go up against the Marquez brothers in the sprint and the Grand Prix here last year, a circuit that he adores and that just seems to really suit his style if he's comfortable with the bike. So yeah, Bagnaia, a few people who know quite a lot of things about MotoGP are fancying his chances this weekend.
Yeah, I certainly do. I'm sure you agree as well. Just a little injury update on Pecco. Spoke to him after the Grand Prix on Sunday. His words were, "I feel like a stick." He was very stiff. He had a bit of a sore neck. His wrist was causing some issues as well, but he did test on the Monday, if you didn't see that, and he's not really mentioned the injuries so far this weekend. He was testing, of course, on the Superbike as well. So I don't think, if you are wondering, that Pecco's going to have any injury issues. And the same can be said for Jorge Martin, thankfully. We'll switch on to Aprilia now. Of course, the top 2 in the World Championship. We touched on it briefly earlier with Bez and Martin. A very difficult Catalan Grand Prix for the Aprilia riders, especially Jorge Martin. 5 crashes, including the one he had in the test, a big one. I was camped outside the media centre on Monday for around about an hour trying to get a little word from Aprilia. Thankfully, Martin, after a visit to hospital, no fractures seen after a couple of x-rays, and he is pretty much fully fit and ready to go in Mugello, which is great news first and foremost, but they will not want another sort of weekend like that, because 5 crashes, including the test, is not ideal. And we can hear from the Aprilia duo now speaking a little bit earlier on today ahead of the Italian Grand Prix, where, of course, it's Bez's home Grand Prix and Aprilia's home Grand Prix as well. So a special weekend coming up for Aprilia.
Yeah, I'm feeling better for sure. I'm not on my 100%, but I'm improving every day. Let's see, tomorrow will be a good test, to understand my condition and where we have to work on my physical side. But yeah, I'm used to it. I'm normally injured, so it's just a small ligaments injury, and I need to work on that.
Barcelona was a bit of a struggle at times, and there was quite a few crashes. So that behind, this weekend at Mugello, what can we expect? It's your first time here with Aprilia.
Yeah, first time with Aprilia, so I'm really looking forward to understand how can the bike perform, how can I perform. Last 2 times here I was on the podium, so I feel pretty confident that we can be close to that podium, at least in the fight. And yeah, we need to be clever in terms of setup because we changed a lot the bike for Barcelona, so we have, I think, to go back. But overall, we are confident.
Final question, Jorge. In the press conference last week in Montmello, you said we can't discount him. This was in regards to Marc Marquez. He's back this weekend.
Yeah.
How do you assess his comeback, and is he still in the title fight, like you said?
Nothing to add from those words. We cannot discount on Mark, never. So I think now he will be even fitter than he was in the past in the first few races. And it's always good to have the best riders in the world here racing. And yeah, I hope we can enjoy a great battle.
Big battle this weekend.
Yes,
then.
I hope.
Yeah, we do hope to see Martin at the front this weekend. I think we're all expecting that is going to be the case. And what should be a strong track for Aprilia as well. We're here from Bez, of course, coming up in the pre-event press conference alongside his compatriots Fabio Gianantonio and Pecco Bagnaia. But continuing the chat on Martin Lewis, thankfully some ligament damage, but pretty much all okay. And obviously some inter-team, inter-manufacturer rivalry brewing between Ralph Fernandez Trackhouse and Aprilia Racing. I'm sure that's all calmed down by now. But how did you assess Martin's weekend overall at his home Grand Prix? A special venue for him, won the 2024 title there as well. A weekend to pretty much forget, I think.
Yeah, in the end, it couldn't have gone much worse. But the way it was shaping up going into the race itself, and of course with Alex Marquez out, it looked like he was set up for him potentially to win that Grand Prix, wasn't it? Given that he got promoted onto the front row of the grid on an Aprilia that was clearly stronger in the race than it had looked at any stage in practice or qualifying that weekend. I think his anger immediately after the Grand Prix, which I think he said he'd essentially been bottling up through the entire race, because he did keep running just in case either there was a third red flag or potentially enough riders dropped out that would promote him into the points. He was absolutely raging when he finally got into the pits, took it all out on his team manager, Paolo Bonora, who he did then apologise to, and I think that's all been smoothed over at Aprilia. I think they understand the emotions involved. But a key weekend this, I think, for Aprilia, generally, not just Jorge Marti, because, as you said, this could be a strong circuit for Aprilia. It's a circuit where you need a very good front end on your motorcycle, and if you ask most riders up and down this pit lane, they would say that the bike with the best front end on the grid is the Aprilia. So we've talked about Marc Marquez a lot and how the context of Marc Marquez's return might lead us to think differently about how strong Aprilia and Ducati are versus each other. Feels like a big weekend for Jorge Martin to bounce back, for Marco Bezzecchi to try and hammer home that point advantage, which perhaps slightly fortuitously he did extend last time out in Barcelona with that promotion up to a rather fortunate 4th place on a weekend where he was pretty uncompetitive. And again, it's a chance for Aprilia to genuinely show that they have got the reference motorcycle in 2026. A lot of points are going to be fought for over the next month or so. We've got this weekend Balloton Park next weekend, another weekend off before we go Brno Assen, weekend off Sachsenring. So 5 Grand Prix in the next 7 weekends heading into the summer break. And I think that World Championship battle is really going to take shape over the next month and a half.
Yeah, for sure. Completely agree. A bumper schedule coming up before a little bit of a hiatus during the summer, which is, of course, what we enjoy. But just touching on Bez as well, a crucial weekend coming up. Home Grand Prix, team's home Grand Prix, leading the championship for the first time coming here to Mugello as well. Added pressure, as is the case at any home Grand Prix, but I think Bez, rude to say that he'll be feeling the pressure, but he'll know there's a lot of expectation on his shoulders to sort of put the Catalan Grand Prix behind him and focus on being back at the front here in Mugello. I don't think he would like to win any race more than here and show to everyone else that the Catalan GP was a blip and I'm here to fight for this title for the rest of the season.
Yeah, as you say, if there's one circuit on the calendar that he'd love to race at, just win at, it would be here. If there's one circuit he'd be quite happy not to see again on the MotoGP calendar, it would be the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalonia, because it is pretty clear that that is his weakest circuit on the calendar by a considerable distance. Just was not competitive at any stage really that weekend. He was always playing catch up to his teammate Jorge Martin. Of course, had the crash in qualifying, was left him 12th on the grid. But I think from what we saw as the weekend unfolded, had he not crashed in qualifying, I don't think he'd have been much higher up the grid than he was in the end in 12th place. So that was a weekend for Marco Bezzecchi want to survive, really, get out with as many points as he could. And the fact that he came out with an extended championship lead, I think will have really boosted him, and he can now go from defence in Barcelona to attack this weekend.
100%. We'd love to see Bez and Aprilia attacking this weekend as they will. Lewis, thank you for joining this Gear Up show. We're going to head over to the pre-event press conference now here at the Italian Grand Prix. As I said, Pecco Bagnaia, Fabio Di Giannantonio and the World Championship leader Marco Bezzecchi joining Matt Burt in the press conference. So thank you for tuning in. Enjoy the weekend, of course, here. It looks like it's going to be a stunner, and see you next time. Thank you.